Hello, Professor. This is my advocacy presentation on the vulnerable population of veterans. Okay. So, some of the things that you kind of notice when diving into such a vulnerable population is that there are so many different cultural aspects that feed into it. And it goes all the way from even when they started kind of talking to the military service, if they were in high school, if they were in college, if they were after college. There are so many differences of people just going into the military, and there are so many more when they are coming out of the military because a lot of them may just have that 2 to 4 year contract. A lot of them do six, a lot of them renew and go to eight, and a lot of them make a career out of it, which is about 20 years. Or some of them did get discharged earlier. And so there's really not like a very simple pattern of we went in at this age, we came out at this age, and here's what happened. Because even during the military, they get different jobs, they go to different trainings, they get stationed different places. And so there's so many factors just in the military of itself, not even including the race of the person, the age of the person, how much family that person has. Um, Anything like that. So that was that's very difficult to kind of address not only the individual but also the like the bigger picture, that macro advocacy, because there's not one simple way to do that. Some of the challenges that these veterans have is just psychological instability coming out of war. Some people come out of that killing somebody for the first time. Some people come out of that just simply seeing things that no person should have to see. A lot of them come back and experience homelessness because um, they just weren't paid enough. They can't hold a steady job, or they just don't have the mental health to do it. A big challenge, the high number. There are so many veterans, and we are so grateful to live in a country. And we should be so grateful to live in a country that has so many people who are willing to protect us. However, it does kind of hurt them on the flip side because there are just not enough providers to help them. They experienced no community coming home. And part of my survey was learning that they didn't have a very good support in education. Part of their resilience, I think that is very plain and simple. They literally went through boot camp. The self-control, the self-discipline is immeasurable compared to some of us who don't. From family experience, my brother went into a surviving training camp where he was thrown out in the middle of the forest and a different country, people who spoke different languages, kidnapped him and took him and basically tortured him. And it was a psychological training on how to get through being tortured. So the control, the discipline, the loyalty to country, the loyalty to their squad, the loyalty to even the branch of the military. It kind of comes out as joking, but they are very loyal, and normally a lot of them are very strong, whether it be mentally or even physically, because they do train so much. So the marginalization, I think we can kind of like look back at the care of veterans, obviously beginning at World War I, kind of seeing like that huge draft, not a bunch of training because they just needed people. But then we kind of saw that pattern of maybe the huge draft, but there's also some incredible statistics for veteran suicide. Um, and so it just goes to show the wars kind of created this like mental health, or rather lack thereof. Words were thrown out like shell shock, combat fatigue. And then it wasn't even until 1980, which blew my mind out of research. That was only 46 years ago that PTSD was officially recognized. And in that, there are even so many different types of PTSD. And so I think we were able to see like kind of the tie between mental health and the beginning of the drafts and the wars, and even those who voluntarily go really are changed for good. So, some social policies that I was really excited to actually find out. So, I'm Ventura County, so I kind of made this very personal to me. I live in Ventura County, California. Something I love about Ventura County is their Veterans Court. They really get to look at the veteran more than their charge, which I think it is really important because sometimes the mental health really does take over. I know in Texas there's a thing called mental health court, and I'm sure there's in other states. Those are just the two that I'm familiar in. But this veteran court really does prioritize rehabilitation over incarceration. And I think sometimes we can look at it as you kind of serve this country, let it serve you back. But I also think it's really important to take a look at the mental health and the damage that being a veteran kind of carries, and be able to kind of empathize and really talk to the person over just kind of this label of criminal or um, incarcerated or whatever that may be. So a social policy for the state of California was really exciting to see the tax exemptions that the veterans can have. Um, so for tax exemptions, it went up to $20,000. And then there was a huge property tax, um, kind of just like a break for any of the veterans or those who are currently serving in the military. A lot of them are known as like military houses. They're all kind of track houses, but either way, it is definitely a huge support. On that federal level, we can see the VA Mission Act, which was a huge win for the veterans, where the VA would expand healthcare, which kind of looked like the veterans not only having to go to the VA to get that healthcare, they could go anywhere that they needed to go. So my advocacy plan was to just improve access to mental health services and support resources for military veterans, depending on what exactly they needed. A lot of my survey was trying to figure out what do you guys even need? Because I myself am not a veteran, but because of family ties, veterans are incredibly important to me. So part of that would look like advocating for increased funding, specifically in the VA, to kind of get more providers in there so that veterans have more access to mental health with more providers, and also just community partners being a part of that, encouraging policymakers to support programs that reduce barriers, which is huge. A lot of something I found from my survey was just that one of the barriers that they had found was simple reading level. They could not even understand what the VA was asking of them to even get an appointment. And again, just partners in the community, Veterans Affairs, obviously, local policymakers must, and the Disabled American Veterans is just an organization that really does serve veterans in every way, shape, and form. So my social media campaign, letting have serving those who faithfully served us, the hashtag Fix the VA, hoping for people sharing their stories with their experience with the VA. And I think honestly, when I first set this out, I was thinking I want them to share more negative experiences, but also if our intention is to really better the VA and benefit the veterans, I hope there are good stories too, because we do want the VA to stay up and running. We just want to make a couple of tweaks. So that was my goal with the social media campaign. Survey questions. This was probably one of my favorite assignments because I genuinely got to hear back from some veterans that really kind of opened my eyes into what they need, what it is that's going on. So the next two slides won't have every single question that I asked in the survey, but it does have a really good layout of what I took from it. So my first question being, have you gone to the VA? And the second one asking them to rate the VA. And so obviously we can see it actually wasn't necessarily as bad as I kind of imagined that it would be. I definitely thought the the answers would kind of skew more towards the end of the rating, but it actually doesn't look as bad as it seems. But I was a little bit confused with a 4-star rating. In looking at a few questions later, do you feel like the VA supported their needs? And all of them said kind of, which of course is so ambiguous. But there was only one positive yes, they have supported my needs, which is interesting to take from these answers. Would you be open to sharing your experience? This was something that obviously goes hand in hand with my social media campaign. Um, Obviously, you can see many of them said no, which of course I love the honesty. I was a little bit shocked. However, I really had to remember most of I had a secondary question that said, if no, why not? And I am not kidding. Every single response was privacy, privacy. I don't want my face on the internet. I would like to stay low key. And so it was all about being private. Some more questions looked like those needs. Again, trying to figure out what it is. Was it medical? Was it dental? Was it housing? And I was actually pretty shocked to see that it was kind of all over the place. None of them food related. And only a small percentage of housing when we see the statistic of homeless veterans. However, that is quite the barrier of getting this survey to homeless veterans. And then I really wanted to compare what those needs may have looked like now, and it looks like maybe over a longer term, the needs kind of really showed an increase of simply being medical versus kind of maybe all kinds of different areas. And then this last section that I included, the was just kind of like, is there anything you want us to know about the VA and your experience? And I think their ideas were great. I think something I said I'd like to see more veterans as employees. Such a great idea, because that would equally add more employees and also get veterans into stable jobs surrounded by professionals who could help them. Um, some people are saying medication is not their favorite. Um, I had asked about counseling earlier, and that one said that he already had counseling going on. And so there was just so much good feedback, and this is only from very few responses that I got. Um, and so I feel really happy with kind of the things that I got to learn from this. Again, the valuation, very positive. Was super excited for this survey. The privacy thing was something that I was a little bit shocked about, that they were not willing to share their experience on a social media platform because a lot of them was they just want to be private and putting their face on the internet is not private, and I totally understand that. Someone had brought up in the survey responses that the veterans who are exiting now, being discharged now versus when they were a veteran, are getting way more benefits. And so they kind of felt like, I did the service. Is their service better than mine? What's going on? I don't have access to this. So that was something that would definitely need to be advocated for. Different states having different VAs. Someone had mentioned that the Omaha practice was really great. And then somebody else had mentioned that the California one was not great. So um, definitely different states are going to have different strengths. Um, and how I would continue to evaluate my advocacy plan. Surveys, man, that was really wonderful. I definitely had my eyes opened. to some of the things that maybe I would not have pulled just doing this on my own. I would evaluate social media engagement, even if faces were not being put up. Maybe the comments would be kind of interactive, having people share their experiences, seeing if anybody can relate to each other. Simply data and statistics. How many more people are going to the VA? How many more people are needing the VA because they now know that they have access to that? Some things that I learned was just simple humility. There's so much you don't know, and it is just incredible to be able to hear people's stories who are just willing to help a master's student out. And so I can't even imagine the difference of engagement if we were in a policy making position. The importance of surveys, getting that reminder of how much people can speak and how much it really pivots my own mind. Just reading one response, let alone all of the ones that I got. Um, and a lot of people who fill this out don't even know who I am. So it was just really humbling and very sweet to see. Obviously, seeing what they actually learned, some of the barriers, obviously, difference in location, veterans who are homeless, who don't have access to this, so that participation, and not knowing the lingo. Sometimes I'd be like writing a question and I would just hope that it made sense to them because I'm a civilian, and some of their responses were a little bit confusing to me because I was like, I don't know what that word means because that's a military word and I don't have experience with that. There are some of my references, and just for you, a final thank you for all of your feedback, all of your support during this class. It really was eye-opening, and I think I've gained a lot of skills from this class. So thank you so much for being my professor through this, and I really genuinely do hope that I get to see you in my future walk as a master's student.